I want a job with a whole bunch of freedom and stuff like this, is at least my point of view. But a lot of people can be happy doing some of the jobs that you might not expect, like being anything, a social worker, somebody who, computer programmer. A lot of them can be happy with just the fact that they have comfort. And I know from what I've learned that happiness comes from self-worth.
Love it.
So as long as you feel like your job is helping yourself and helping other people and is worth something.
Have you ever felt awkward when trying to start a conversation? Do you ever find yourself feeling overwhelmed? Or perhaps you wish you could keep track of your money better? Do adulting skills give you grief? What if you had one place to go to learn about all these skills and more?
Welcome to Adulting Decrypted. We prepare young adults to be independent powerhouses for life. An independent powerhouse is someone who possesses the ability to be socially, emotionally, practically, and financially independent.
Let's take a quick second for us to introduce ourselves.
I'm Ashton. When I first moved out, I wanted nothing more than independence. There were a lot of things that I didn't know, and I needed help from my parents in basically all facets of my life. I went on a 2-year service mission, and when I came home, I was determined to do better than I did before. I'm now living on my own, paying for my own place, and learning a ton of lessons that I am happy to learn, even though they may be difficult. I'm excited to share what I'm learning. I'm also excited to learn with you.
I'm Gideon. And while seeing the world and people around me, I've always wanted to stand out and be more prepared than my peers, lacking the skill to know where to look and to find guidance, other than my older and wiser family. Now with this podcast, I can learn how to progress and share this knowledge with others.
I'm Roscoe, the dad. Michelle and I thought we had taught the children everything they needed to know to become adults. Then one day at dinner, we were having a conversation about an Ivy League school had just started Adulting 101, and they were teaching such basic skills, and I was laughing. That's when Ashton jumped in, Gene and Gideon, and all told us about the gaps in our training. That is why we decided to launch Adulting Decrypted.
Normally, there are 4 hosts for the show. Gene, the 4th host, is currently on a 2-year service mission.
I'm Gene, and I'm actually recording this on my phone because I'm out in Louisiana and Mississippi. I won't be able to join the discussion today. I will be back, I promise.
While we won't be able to hear his live comments, we're looking forward to sharing his thoughts and his stories regularly on the show.
And now, on with the episode.
Welcome to Adulting Decrypted, the show where we help adults become powerhouses for life.
Like
Today
the mitochondria.
That's right. Today we've got a kind of a cool episode going on. We're going to take some of our listener questions and instead of just answering them on Reddit and Facebook, we're actually going to sit down and have a conversation and share those with you. So the first question that came to us is, how do I love myself more and be an overall happier person?
First off, that's a great question.
It is a fun question, isn't it?
Well, it's probably a question a lot of us have thought of before. Actually, kind of funny, I wrote down in my own little journal that I have this morning when I get back into writing down my goals and whatnot. But I wrote down that every time I walk through a doorway, I want to smile. And it's an example that I've heard in a different book where you walk through a doorway and you fix your posture, you stand up straight so you look presentable and good, great for meeting new people and whatnot. But I just thought that'd be interesting, is to walk through a doorway and smile. And I know scientifically it's proven, I don't have any data, but I know it's proven that smiling, even when you maybe aren't feeling great, helps your situation. I know it has for me in the past.
Great. I love it. So smile more.
My thought with that, it goes back to something we talked about a while ago about how we should avoid shoulds. Because I know for me, a lot of my negative experiences with myself come from me saying, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And if you think about that sort of self-talk and how it would be relative to you speaking to someone else, like if you and yourself were two different people, and every time you saw yourself, you said to them, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you would hate that person, you wouldn't want to hang out with them. And that's really what you're doing to yourself. And so for me, getting over the shoulds, and in our other episode where we talk about this, I think it's a word debate, we talk about switching shoulds for needs and wants. Because saying you need to do something and you want to do something, have a better perspective on life. Because if you want to do something, it doesn't feel like you're being pushed to do it, except for from a positive place. So I think if you're trying to love yourself more, try and see what things are making you love yourself less in that as you're speaking to yourself. And try and switch how you're talking to yourself.
Great answers, both of you. You know, and the other thing I'd add to that, as the dad, I would say be patient with yourself. Realize that this life is a journey. It's not a quick, short, fast process. Realize that, yeah, you're going to wake up some mornings and you're going to look at your phone and you're going to spend an hour on TikTok and you're going to be real irritated and frustrated and go, why did I just waste that hour? Well, the quicker you can forgive yourself and say, look, yeah, I made a mistake, but now it's time to move on. Putting the other practices in place, which is smiling as you're going new places and as you stop worrying about the should and other people judging you and thinking what you could and couldn't do. The sooner you forgive yourself and move on, I think that will help in that whole situation. Great answers, great conversations.
Something that I think can aid in that too, in forgiving yourself, is you don't know what you don't know. You know that you probably shouldn't be spending all your time on social media, but like with a lot of other, that's not the only thing. It's the thing that's probably referenced the most in podcasts and in motivational speaking. One of my sources of negative self-talk come from feeling like I'm not as far as I should be in career and in life practices, but I have to try and take comfort in the fact that I don't know what I don't know yet. There's more to be learned in life. So forgiving yourself for what you don't know and not holding yourself accountable for something that you don't know.
Well, yeah, it's easy at 50 to look back and judge my 25-year-old self for some of the decisions I made, 25 years later going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It's really easy to do that.
Yeah.
But is it fair to beat myself up? No, because I didn't know that.
Right.
Hey, I tell you, when I was graduating high school, I teased my brothers that computers were a fad. Little did I know that they're running everything from my podcast to my phone to my everywhere. So, yeah, good point.
It's a fad that never left.
Perfect. Thank you, listener, for that question.
Yeah, go listener.
The next question we got is, how many of you actually like your job?
That's a good question. I've thought about this myself, actually, recently. You look excited.
I don't know. I like to think about statistics a lot, and it's interesting. A lot more people like their job than, I would expect. At least me personally would expect, because I always hear everybody hates their job, and so I want a job with a whole bunch of freedom and stuff like this. Is at least my point of view. But a lot of people can be happy doing some of the jobs that you might not expect, like being anything, a social worker, somebody computer programmer. A lot of them can be happy with just the fact that they have comfort. And I know from what I've learned that happiness comes from self-worth.
Love it.
So as long as you feel like your job is helping yourself and helping other people and is worth something, then you can be.
They say that one man's trash is another man's treasure. So I like that sometimes getting, I think, your point that you're making there that I really latched onto is just because I love it doesn't mean that you'll love it. Right? I might hate it. I might think, oh man, I could never do that job. And it brings you a lot of self-fulfillment. That's a great observation. Like I could never teach music. It would drive me crap crazy.
Hey, you know what?
Literally.
To those who do, it still does on occasion. I think something important to hang on to there too is
saying just real quick before you go.
Sure.
Even the job you love that you're passionate about, still has days that feel like work.
Yeah, the famous quote that probably this person's hanging over their head is, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. The things that we love the most are the things we work the most for, and the things that take the most sacrifice. If you truly love something, you'll sacrifice for that thing, and you'll do very hard things to keep that thing strong. And so the good thing with that is if you're working a job that you don't like you get nothing from it. For me, when I was working at Walmart, I got nothing except a ton of steps and a ton of time to listen to books. So those things worked out great for me. But aside from loading up cars, could not have cared less about all that. And so
I'll tell you, the job you hated was the night shift at doTERRA.
Oh, that's true. Actually, there was nothing rewarding about that job because I couldn't have headphones either. I worked a night shift. It was a temp gig, and it was a full-time night job. I worked there for a total of 2 nights and proceeded to ghost them on everything else because I was like, this sucks. If you have a job where it's not rewarding at all, you're still going to put in just as much work to that job as the thing that you would love. But the difference is the job you love, after you've worked through all the pain and that effort, you'll get a product that you love out of it. So last year, speaking on the job that I love, I was teaching some kids, and they were just so far behind. They were to the level where it had been so long since I was at their level, I didn't know how to teach them what they needed to know. And that was super frustrating. It would be like sitting in a primary classroom and saying to a kid, hey, that color's red. And then they pointed at blue and be like, red? And you're like, no, the one that's red is red. It was that level. And so that was really frustrating. But then 6 months later, most of those kids kept going, and they got to the point where they were able to put together a show that they just absolutely knocked out of the park.
Oh, so they could identify red.
Yeah, by the end of the season, that part was rewarding. And now, had it been working this night shift of checking stupid bottles for QR codes that I could barely see,
because you're sweating into your goggles.
Yeah, and I wasn't allowed to wear headphones. That was the worst part. I probably would have been okay with that job if I could have listened to music, but since it was like an assembly line or something, it's against OSHA or something.
Sure.
But yeah, so
government.
Stupid government. There's never a reward at the end of that road. But if you're working for something that you love, it will suck for a little bit. Then if you truly love it, the reward that you get will at the end will be worth it. So if you're asking yourself oh, I'm not loving every minute of your job, I don't think you're supposed to. Easier said than done. But yeah, my advice would be, 1, identify if the work you're putting in is getting a reward out of it that you want. If it's just financial compensation, great. But if it's something beyond that, ask yourself if your work's giving you that. And then if it's not, switch it up. No one's stopping you.
It's an interesting, I think we're kind of skewed. I've skewed you guys. I've told you since you're little that a job is like a car. As long as it's taking you to your destination, keep the car. Once it stops going where you need it to go, get rid of the car and get a different car. It's not like being married. It's not like buying a house. A job is a job. Now, that being said, there are some downsides to living like that. I've had 21 different jobs in 25 years of a working career. Now,
momentary lapses in health insurance.
Yeah, but a lot of mine, and that's only because of this new change in government laws. Don't get me started. So back to what we're talking about. The reality is I've stayed with certain things for a long time. I've also just launched a bunch of side projects and try to make them work because of my entrepreneurial spirit. I do believe what you said, Ashton, where hey, it's just a job. Go ahead and feel free to change, but stick with it and see if the reward's there. And then, Gideon, I think you brought up a very strong point, which is not everybody's going to like the same thing, so we don't baseline against each other for a job. And the statistics used to say about 3 years ago that 52% of the people were unhappy with their current job, but were afraid to change. 4 years ago, and then COVID happened. We have a lot of silent quits and a lot of things like that, which I'm totally against. I think if you're not happy with your job, it's time to move on. But on the same token, I believe employers should be able to move on too if you're not working out. So to answer that question, do you like your job or not? I think that's a personal thing, and if you don't, I think it's time to change. And then, If you don't know how to change, go listen to some of our habit episodes. Go listen to some of our other things that we've talked about that will help you make the right career choice.
Our ET episode would be good too.
ET is really good on that.
Because you're defining yourself.
I actually, just for the people who like statistics, I just looked it up, and it says that 65% of people like their jobs, but only 20% of U.S. employees say that they're passionate about their work.
Well, that's awesome. 65% is a huge jump. I bet you if you pulled that number back. And look, we're in a day and age now where it's easier to change jobs than it ever was before. You know, before, once you got into a job, you didn't know where the next one was. You didn't know what your career was. But 52% of y'all want to have side gigs. So it's not, where we're at is not uncommon. Gideon, thank you for sharing that. Great question, listener. Really, really good conversation. Next question from a listener. Does anyone just sit and think that they are not adulting enough?
Yes.
Yeah, for example, this is what the listener says. Like when it comes to things like finances and speaking to agents about home buying, home and auto insurance, etc., can sometimes be challenging when they're explaining things and not using terms that others can understand. Like, when does doctors use a fancy term instead of something that is dumbed down? Ashton, go ahead. You started with a resounding yes.
Remember what the question was?
Does anyone just sit and think they're not adulting enough? And then it talked about finances and home buying and
that's kind of it. Yes. There's just so much. There's just so much going on in adulting. Like, it's such a deep pool to try and swim in, and it just feels so easy to drown or just feel like you're not a part of it because there's just so many layers. I don't have a solution to that one, but I mean, I've definitely felt that. Yep.
Kind of what Ashton was saying. It's really helpful just to know that you're not alone in your struggles. And that really goes with anything, but even in this case, like, yeah, adulting sucks. It's hard sometimes, and calling your doctor, not sure what they're saying. I know Ashton's done this before, and we talked about it in a different episode. But he asked the person, he's like, please just explain this to me like I was 5 years old. Like, dumb it down, please, for me. And a lot of people are happy to. Some people might get annoyed, but a lot of people are nice and are happy to explain.
Worth it to ask.
I'll tell you what, we love giving advice. The older we get, the more we think we can help because we feel like we've been there, done that. So I love that you talked about asking for help. Ashton, I like the point that you said, look, there's so much. And I'd really recommend the listener on that one to go back and listen to some of our different episodes. They deep dive. And it's interesting that I wish the listener could follow us around because after our episodes, we will sit there and Ashton will go, wait a second, we talked about this. I don't quite understand this principle. Even though we talked about it, now that I've had a day or two to digest it, I'm still kind of confused. And it's because there is a lot going on. Sabrina and I took, maybe an hour and a half yesterday going through her benefits that she got from school and how to make sure she signed up and actually getting all of her benefits. And at the end of the day, we ended up having to call somebody. And she did great. She used the tool she heard in our episode. But I think all of us feel a little bit like we're frauding at this adult thing. But guess what? So am I, right? We put a lot of pressure on Ashton saying, hey, get your health insurance, And then come to find out, not qualifying for Medicare is a qualifying event. So welcome to adulting. You're going to feel overwhelmed at times. All right, here's another listener question. Are homemade noodles that much better than normal noodles? I recently found that homemade noodles are kind of less expensive than pre-made ones.
I love that question.
Depends on what you're making.
Man, Mom's homemade noodles for chicken noodle soup that are like half an inch thick and like quarter of an inch tall are just glorious.
Yeah, but can you imagine trying to eat a spaghetti with those
Nah.
noodles?
No, I cannot. It's definitely
That's what I'm
chicken noodle
saying.
soup noodle.
Like, those are cheap noodles would be amazing, but spaghetti noodles from the store, if you're just making yourself a spaghetti or an Alfredo, they don't really miss.
And even though it might be cheaper, you also got to think about the time. like the time it would take to make your own noodles. And if you want to do that as a hobby, go for it. Like that's dope. Especially like if it's cheaper and you have fun making your own noodles, go for it. Really, whatever.
I would say make your own noodles if you want
Yeah,
to. It's fun. I did it when I was out of the country once, and I remember my hands were super sticky. To make some homemade noodles, you take flour and egg and stuff.
For egg noodles, yeah.
Yeah, for egg noodles. And I was making them, and we didn't have enough ingredients. So I went to one of my roommates, and I said, hey, can you just go ask the neighbors for some stuff? He walked out and came back in, and he was like, no. And so I had to make noodles without all the ingredients. They turned out okay, but it was pretty funny.
I can't remember which one. That's why I'm looking blankly. Showed me a TikTok video where they made their own noodles, but they started by taking...
That was me.
Taking noodles and breaking them up and then kind of mushing them together and then making noodles.
Essentially, they replaced the flour with other noodles that had been made, which is just the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah. So my take on homemade noodles is they're great in some dishes, and others I'm with Ashton. It's not worth the effort and energy to buy the stuff you need to make a pasta noodle. But once again, you, the listener, get to decide how you best want to do that.
That being said, if you get deep into making your own noodles, listener, we kindly request that you send us some of your homemade noodles.
Yes, please. I like that question a lot, actually.
Here's a question from a listener. Feeling uncomfortable first time working. I've started working for a few weeks now. My first job after graduation last year. Let me tell you, it is depressing. I feel so uncomfortable doing the routine, waking up early in the morning, returning home to rest, only to go back to work the next day. I get so anxious at work. I'm scared that I'll make a mistake. I can't imagine doing this for the rest of my life. What advice would you give the listener?
Thinking back on experiences where I was working true 9 to 5 or even going to school every day, like that sort of stuff can be draining. I think the advice there, now that I'm thinking about it, is find hobbies, like something to kind of reset you every time you get home. Make friends with coworkers at work. Sometimes people go to work, stay in their little bubble, and then they go home, and that makes waking up and getting, if you know that when you get there, homeboy James is going to be there and y'all are going to have a laugh, then, show up and have a laugh. Might make it a little easier. So that's my advice. Either find a hobby or make friends with your coworkers. Okay. Call them homeboys.
So I think my answer to this is a little bit different. Good. I think it might be important to go and look at your own goals. And job interviews, a classic question, or at least a stereotypical question, would be, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And it would be important to answer that question for yourself and even write it down. So then when you're going to that job or you wake up and you're like, this is so mundane, you can think about your own future and what you can do to get there. And then I feel like as long as you're working on something that you deem matters, I think it can help your situation. But yeah, I've definitely felt that way before.
Hello. If you're listening to this right now, that means you're currently listening to an episode of Adulting Decrypted. And let me just say thank you. My name's Ashton, one of the hosts of Adulting Decrypted, and I wanted to steal a quick second of your time to do a shameless little plug. If you've listened to our podcast for any sort of time, you know that we talk about a bunch of different stuff all about adulting. Because our goal is to help individuals in this task we call adulting. Now, we have just revamped the way that we do this. If you go to adultingdecrypted.com, you can see all of our episodes sorted out by category. We've sorted it into financial, practical, emotional, social, and things just for fun. So, if any of those categories are of particular interest to you right now, you can go onto the website, look through there, and see all of our episodes that correlate with that specific thing. This website's completely free to use. It's just another tool for our listeners to find things that are more important to them now. So, for example, if I was looking at it, I'd scroll through and say, hey, you know what? I want to see what the Adulting Decrypted crew has talked about socially. Well, one of our first episodes, Season 1, Episode 3, how do I talk to people? And it's where we talked about all how to talk to people. So if that's something you want right now, you can go find that right now. Also in this one, Season 3, Episode 15, The Power of a Humble Mediator, where we talked to one of my old bosses about his business as a mayor, also as a small theater owner. Some really cool stuff. So, if you're looking for a better way to organize through all your self-help podcasts, try adultingdecrypted.com and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, my advice on something like that would be, I like Ashton with hobbies. Very critical, especially if it's your first job and you know that's what you're going to do. Gideon, I love that you said look at your personal goals, and as it helping me get to those goals, then you look at it a means to an end. And then the final challenge that I'd give the listener would be try and cut out the rest of my life in that statement. You know, is this the job that can help me get to where I want to go, versus think, oh, is this the job for the rest of my life? And the reason why to me that feels like such a big difference, it's maybe not my whole thing, but at least it'll help me get. That's the only thing that I would take out of there, is realize that it's not for your entire life. Okay, go ahead. Have you ever? Question is, have you ever reached a point of not caring what people think? For sure, that's the main question. I forgot to shave my legs. My toenails are chipping, and there are a bunch of calluses. Adulting is already busy, and I just can't seem to slow down.
Yeah, I already don't care, so it's fine. Like, first up, this sounds like it's a feminine question. I don't know. I know some guys who shave their legs.
Why are you looking at me?
Oh, no reason.
I have porcupine legs right now. I forgot to shave.
I mean, you just got to pick your battles. It's okay to not care about some things, and it's important to care about others. So if you're not worried about the fact that you have porcupine legs and it doesn't matter to you if people care or not, then that's fine. You know, but if you don't care that you have poorly pedicured toes or something, like, and you're not worried about other people caring, then that's totally fine. There's times and places to present yourself nicely. It's also important to be yourself. You don't have to. It's exhausting to try and please other people your whole life. So I think it's important to not take yourself too seriously when it comes to appearances and such.
Yeah, I think my answer kind of fits in with the last section of your answer, Ashton, where it's as long as you feel like yourself. Because if you're normally the person where you yourself care about, being properly shaven and manicured, then sometimes when you aren't, you just feel like you're not organized or that something's a little bit off, even though you might not know what it is. So I think it's also important to not change yourself. But so to answer the question, yes, on certain things, sometimes it matters in maybe a job interview what the person hiring you thinks. But in most of my situations, it's more important to be myself than to try and please other people.
A quote that goes along with that made a big difference to me is when I stopped buying things to impress people that I don't like, was pretty freeing, because I realized, look, I get to choose what adulting looks like to me. I get to choose what I define as success, not what do other people think, but will my appearance and will my preparation and will what I put out into the world, will it get the result that I want to get? Right? So it's not that I don't care what other people think, but I have to look and say, okay, how are people going to perceive me showing up looking like this? How are people going to perceive me sending this email? Because I need to impress them. I want to impress them. I want that to get that goal. But I don't care what they think of my house necessarily, or my boat, or my cars, or my toys. Right? Because I do that stuff for me. I think that's freeing when you decide, and I think that goes back to what you're saying, Ashton. When you decide what's critical and what's important and when it's important, then I think that you've actually made it as an adult, because now you can look at life objectively, and you're not doing counter things, just saying, look, I want to piss people off, so I'm going to dress like this, or I'm going to act like this. But it's freeing in the sense that you get to decide. All right, the last question that was posed. Tipping. Seems like everywhere has a tip jar now.
If you have not waited a table that I'm sitting at, or done a service that I could not have conceivably come back behind the counter and done myself, then I'm not tipping. If I go to a fast food restaurant and the person that just rung me up at the cash register asks for a tip, I'm not paying that because I could have walked behind the register and done that tip myself. I would tip, though, if I was at a restaurant and someone was waiting 4 or 5 different tables and they took care of mine well, because they're doing a bunch of extra work, and that's built into their industry, that they make money off their tips. The little soda shacks, it's not built into their industry that their employees live off of tips, as far as I know. And I could go be a soda jerk myself. So that's my opinion. I think the tipping culture's gone a little excessive, especially with how much tipping costs now too. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think I agree. It depends on the environment that you're in, because I have seen a lot of my friends go into the fast food type of jobs, not necessarily waiters or waitresses, because like you said, that's different, where a lot of their pay is based off of tips. For fast food, I know what people get paid before tips, so I don't mind saying no tip to the person, who just rung me up at Costa Vida, where I'm like, you said, oh, here's your food. So.
Oh, sorry.
I was talking to a young gal that works at one of those restaurants. She goes $15 an hour plus tips, and they don't know what those tips are going to be,
Yeah.
But she goes, I wouldn't tip us. It doesn't make any sense. We didn't do anything to earn that extra tip. We didn't do anything to help you or to increase the value.
Well, it doesn't hurt the employer none to put that tip thing up there. I mean,
I
their
think
employees
it does.
might get more, but
Well, I think it does. I think it gives you a bad taste. I mean, a lot of people are frustrated with it. JCW, which is one of the hamburger joints that I really like here locally, took it off. They don't even ask it.
I was so excited when I went there and was like, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, so you're right. It doesn't make people not go to the restaurant, but it is kind of irritating when somebody goes, oh, here, and they spin it over to you. And they're like, and they stand there and look at you, and you're like, no. And then the autofill is pretty dirty, too, because it's how much it puts in there. So I think it's really forcing us all to watch our credit card a little bit better and making sure that the receipt comes out right. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's necessary. Now, that being said, I think because we've gone over the top with tipping culture, I think that people are going to stop tipping at nicer restaurants where they really should be tipping. I had a guy that was serving Mom and I at Texas Roadhouse. My gift card was for $25. My meal was $22. So I put $5 more on a credit card charge because of it. But most people would probably say, oh, well, $23, I give him $1.50 tip. That's close enough. Well, no, that guy just spent his time, energy, and effort, and he's only getting paid $2 or $3 an hour. Versus the kid behind the counter that makes $17 an hour at Costa Vida, and then is wondering why I didn't just give him $5 tip when they didn't do anything. My 2 cents on tipping, or $5.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Adult and Decrypted. We really enjoyed having this week's conversation, and we hope you did as well.
If you ever want to comment on the topics, you can send us a message to our website, adultingdecrypted.com, our email, adultingdecrypted@gmail.com, or through our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts at adultingdecrypted.
If you have any topics for the show that you would like us to talk about, or if you are a parent and want us to talk about something your kids should know, send us a message on any of the accounts mentioned. If you would like to be a guest or have an idea for someone you think we should have on our show, feel free to send us an email detailing your thoughts to adultingdecrypted@gmail.com. Adulting is teamwork.
We have merch. If you want to show off your Adulting Decrypted pride, check out our website, adultingdecrypted.com, or our partner website with shop.spreadshirt.com/adulting-decrypted.
Lastly, if you enjoyed the show, please consider supporting us on our Patreon at Adulting Decrypted. Along with the benefits that come with our Patreon, and trust us, there are some pretty good ones in there, you will not only be helping us continue in the effort to make great content, but you will be part of a community of individuals all trying their best to adult.
We appreciate you listening, enjoying, and leaving your positive reviews. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Adulting Decrypted. We really enjoyed having this week's conversation, and we hope you did as well.
If you ever want to comment on the topics, you can send us a message to our website, adultingdecrypted.com, our email, adultingdecrypted@gmail.com, or through our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts at adultingdecrypted.
If you have any topics for the show that you would like us to talk about, or if you are a parent and want us to talk about something your kids should know, send us a message on any of the accounts mentioned. If you would like to be a guest or have an idea for someone you think we should have on our show, feel free to send us an email detailing your thoughts to adultingdecrypted@gmail.com. Adulting is teamwork.
We have merch. If you want to show off your Adulting Decrypted pride, check out our website, adultingdecrypted.com, or our partner website with shop.spreadshirt.com/adulting-decrypted.
Lastly, if you enjoyed the show, please consider supporting us on our Patreon at Adulting Decrypted. Along with the benefits that come with our Patreon, and trust us, there are some pretty good ones in there, you will not only be helping us continue in the effort to make great content, but you will be part of a community of individuals all trying their best to adult.
We appreciate you listening, enjoying, and leaving your positive reviews. Now, the special song from Gene and Gideon.